Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Walden Art, and today we're going to be doing another art and review for one of my patrons. I have a few people that subscribe to my mentorship Patreon, and over there I would do like art and reviews. We would give them homework assignments, or they would do some inking assignments or penciling assignments or whatever assignments they want to do on their own, and they would send me the image, one image, and I would do an art review and critique over the work. This one that I got was a page that was inked over penciler Joe Quesada. So this is a nice one when he worked on Daredevil. My patron, his name is Mark, and we're going to be doing an art review and critique over his work. And if you're interested in checking that out, my Patreon page is patreon.com/WaldenWongArt. Over there, there's different tiers that you can look at. And for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Walden Wong. I'm a comic book artist from Marvel and DC Comics. Been doing comics for quite some time now. You can learn more about me and my work over on my website. My website is WaldenWongArt.com. Over there, you can see a gallery, videos, blog, store, Amazon store with all the stuff that I worked on, as well as the art supplies I use. So check that out. So without further ado, let's check out Mark's work over on this Daredevil sample page that he inked. So here we go. Alright, so let's take a quick look at the work. So we're going to take a look at Joe Quesada's pencil pages first. So this is the page from Daredevil. We see Daredevil on the bottom. So here's the panel. Some of Joe Quesada's original work when roughly he was working before he became editor-in-chief in Marvel. So this is a pretty long time ago. So here's the first panel. Here's the second panel, classic Joe Quesada style artwork. And we have the bottom part where Daredevil is holding on to something, and then there's a splash of blood over here. And then we have Daredevil holding a baby, and then some of the clouds, and then here's looking at the baby and then protecting the baby, coddling the baby. Okay, now we're going to take a look at the inks. The inks that my patron did. Here's his work. We're going to go back up and look at the detail. The spatter, looks like he added some of his own spatter technique right over here. So that's pretty good. But I'm going to say right away, I'm going to actually start saying something about the spatter. So originally when the penciler drew the spatter, they're directional. Directional meaning these lines, these spatter lines, they're not just dots like that. They're more like directional dots. So it's also penciled in as directional dots. Okay, so it looks like just movement. So when it was inked, I noticed that you did ink the original pencils as directional, but some of the other dots that you used, a toothbrush or a card or a spoon or whatever that you did here to spatter on top, they're just dots. Okay, so it doesn't really make sense why they're dots. They should be more directional. So what we're going to do is take a look at some of these dots here. So instead of making those dots just like little circles, I would actually hold the toothbrush and then angle it on your drawing paper and then spatter that way. This way you get dots that are more like lines. Okay, so I would follow the direction of how the spatter is going and then angle my toothbrush or angle my whatever device, whatever tool that you're using to do the spatter. Instead of spattering it straight down, angle it lower to the paper so those dots are more directional. Okay, so there's regular spatter and then there's directional spatter. Very important to remember the difference between the both. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at some of the pencils and the rendering. Okay, so in the pencils, it's kind of pixelated, so we can't really see the detail. When I go in, it's kind of gray. So this could be like a many generation photocopy, or it's just a bad scan. We take a look at the inks, and the inks are also a little bit pixelated. So let me see what resolution this was scanned in. Image size. So it's 96 dpi at 11 by 17. 96 dpi resolution is really small. If it's saved as a PDF or something, usually when files are saved as a PDF, everything gets compressed. To send files back and forth is the best resolution. The lowest resolution is to send it in JPEG in maybe 150 dpi, 160. That's when all the detail is clear. But when you convert it into a PDF, which Mark sent it to me in, everything gets a little bit harder to see because the detail's not there. But ignoring some of the fuzziness and the pixelation, I can still see what the artist did with the inking. So we'll go from there. I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to make, actually, now that we're here, maybe I should teach you guys how to scan artwork. You should scan at 600 dpi in color. After scanning it, convert that color file into grayscale And after converting to grayscale, reduce it to 67%. After reducing it to 67%, reduce it again to 400 dpi. After that, then you can send files that way. That way, your line work is not as pixelated. Like for example, if you save this file and you would send it to the publishers, they will do a quick look, and then they'll look at the lines like how I'm looking at it, and then they'll see that it's not really clear. So saving files in a clear resolution is always the best way to go. Okay, we're going to take a look at some of the ink lines, ignoring some of the pixelation. So right over here, I do see some lines. It looks like it's pixeled, like the taper is okay, but I can still tell that some of the lines are like too close and some of them is too far. Like for example, even if it's pixelated, there's a cluster here. There's a cluster and there's just one that's not clustered. This is inked nicely, but this one is all meshed together. Right over here, you see this part over here? That one's meshing together because when you're inking those taper lines, they were way too close to each other. So when you reduce it, it gets all clustered. Those lines usually get meshed together and it would be hard to see. The spacing of the taper lines should be a little bit better. Like for example, right here, I would space those lines. Let me increase the resolution here. Image size, because even when I do the critique, it's a little bit off. I'm gonna move it to 150 dpi so I can draw lines a little bit more clearer. Okay, and we're gonna take a look at the lines here. So when you're tapering lines, it's better to have a sharp tip and then go from like that. Okay, so some of these they're meshing together. Image size, I'm gonna increase the resolution a little bit more because it's still too low. Because if I'm making lines, I want everyone to see those lines to be crisp and to see the sharp lines there. Higher resolution takes more memory on your computer. Lower resolution takes less, but for image clarity, it's better to have a higher resolution. So some of these I'm going to rotate. You see these taper lines? You see how this cluster is thick over here, and all of a sudden it's thin here, and all these on the bottom is like that. You should actually taper lines a little bit more clean, like this. Okay, everything's so pixelated. Okay, here we go. So when you tapering those lines, just make sure this part and that part is kind of level. Okay, you want to make it nice and neat. Okay, I'm going to take a look at the line weights first to see how the line weights are. Okay, I would work on some of the holding line. Holding line is the outline of the figure work. Some of these are a little bit wobbly. Let's take a look at the pencils. Yeah, so if you look at the pencils, you'll see that the penciler, Joe Quesada, he drew this line really clean and sharp, really straight. Okay, but with the inks, they're a little bit kind of wobbly. So to prevent wobbliness, what I would recommend is ink lines a little bit faster. So if you ink a line, like I'm gonna demonstrate like on the cloud right here. Now if I ink a line, if I go slowly, you're always gonna get a wobbly, shaky, bumpy line. But if you go fast, you're gonna get a more crisper line. You know, it's just a little bit more clean when you ink a little bit quicker. Okay, we're gonna take a look at some of the other areas. Okay, some of this cross hatching line, I will go in there and kind of like taper those in a little bit, so it's a nice transition, because that's supposed to be a shadow that goes in. So we're gonna taper this side, and this side, just to make it a little bit nicer than like a really heavy shadow there. Let's see how the penciler drew that. Yeah, it's hard to see the resolution on this. Okay, so we're gonna take a look at Daredevil. Okay, Daredevil's pretty good. Okay, the background. Okay, the background, I would like some of those lines to be a little bit sharper. I can tell that these are blunt. Just go in there and just make sure these lines are a little bit sharper. We want the more sharper the lines that you can create, the better your artwork will look. Okay, just make sure instead of having blunts, always have like sharp lines. Unless it's like on purposely, they're supposed to be round there. But most time, just try to make it sharp. Okay, we're gonna take a, okay, so this leg over here, you see how there's like a lot of lines here? Let's see how the penciler drew that. Okay, so sometimes the penciler draws stuff and it's kind of off. So the way I would ink this section here, I would go thick, and then go thin here, and then go thick, and then thin. Okay, just to have that one smooth line. Yeah, so I would practice using a brush or a quill and try to make lines look fluid as best as you can. So don't have that much jaggediness. Let's see if the penciler drew that. So yeah, round that off. That looks like it's jagged because there's a tangent right there. But if you can't go in there and just make this a little bit rounded, it'll look nicer. Okay, we're gonna take a look at the next panel. Here's an example of the nose area. So I will ink these lines. very neatly. I would stack them evenly across from one another, and I would close up those little triangles as best as I can. Okay, we don't want like little big black areas here, and all of a sudden there's a little thin area there. Okay, when you're hatching lines, make sure they're spaced evenly. So some of these lines, make sure they're spaced evenly as much as you can. Okay, so if you don't have it spaced evenly, you get these bloops and blobs and mesh line, like this black area here. All of a sudden it's like a gray tone, all of a sudden a black tone here. So just make sure when you're hatching lines, space them evenly. My best advice about hatch lines and cross hatch lines is try to ink it like if you're a computer printer, you're printing a gray tone out. Gray tones are perfectly even. Okay, they're all spaced evenly. So like that. When I do that, this is spaced evenly, but when I'm doing random lines, you can tell that there's like blobs and it's not nice. It's not as nice gray tone over there. Okay, we're gonna take a look at the next panel. Okay, yeah, I would say work on having lines a little bit more smoother. Like for example, the eyes over here, I noticed that it's like I'm turning this upside down and taking a look here. Some of those line here is a little bit wobbliness. So I would actually ink a line, do a ghost line, and then go a little bit quicker. When you go quicker and then rotate a little bit and then continue on that line will be a little bit more smoother. The faster you ink that line, the smoother it'll go. So we have this line. You see how this eye is a little bit kind of like wobbly a little bit? Just go in there and ink a partial line, turn the page, and then continue that line. So you get a nice smooth line all the way across. With inking, don't just trace, always try to get a smooth line as best as you can. We're gonna look at Daredevil here. So there's no line work from over here. With the pencil one, it's like a bright tone. So usually when there's like a bright tone area, I would really go very thin over here, and then go like taper that line really thin, and then go thicker later on. So I would use a brush or a quill or a micron, draw that line really thin, and then thicken it out. So very thin, almost needle thin, and then go around. So if I was doing this really quickly to do the whole head, I would do a ghost line, find out if it works, go very thin, and then just press down. See how thin that line is? And you want that to be as thin as you can. Okay, and we're gonna rotate. Actually, let me go back and show you the difference. Let me rotate this again. Okay, I'm gonna go very thin. See that? So you can go here and just beef up this one, and then here we want that tip to be really needle point sharp. Okay, as best as you can. Okay, we're gonna take a look at some of the other areas. Okay, same with this. Right here it looks pretty good, but right here you can make this thinner. Anytime you break up the lines, instead of having a blunt there, try to go thin and there's a sharp tip, and then you go back thick. So both of this and this is like really needle point thin if you're breaking up lines. We're gonna look at, okay, we're gonna need this halo here. This halo here is a little bit too, like, disappearing, it's tapering off. So what you can do is just go in there and just make this like a little bit thicker. Okay, let's see what the penciler did. Penciler didn't indicate a halo, and you're adding a halo, which is pretty good. Okay, we're gonna take a look. Yeah, some lines it needs to be a little bit crisper, a little bit. Some of them are kind of, I don't know if this is, yeah, some of this kind of shaky. So just make sure like this area is done nice. I like the way this is done. Okay, let me go here. Let me use the red pencil to circle it so you can see it. So right over here, these taper triangles are done nicely. I like the way that's hatched in. Some of these they're a little random. So what I'll do is I want to space them evenly as best as I can. Okay, space them evenly, and then go thicker, and then come back into it. You can always, sometimes if you have a hard time like some of these that's further out, just use whiteout and just kind of like erase the bottom like that, and then it'll be even. Because it's always okay to use whiteout if you're doing artwork for publication. When a book is published and stuff is whiteout, no one's gonna know that you use whiteout, so it's always okay to use whiteout. It's never bad. You use as many whiteout. Some people, you can use whiteout to do special effects. Okay, we're gonna take a look at this panel. Yeah, so right away, the one thing I want you to focus more on is to have more smoother lines. There's lines are wobbly a little bit, okay? My best advice is to just ink those lines faster. The faster you ink like these lines, regardless of what the stroke is, the smoother those lines will look. You want your lines to look smooth and not shaky. Here's shaky lines here. Here's like bumpy, shaky lines here. You see that? Just go in there and just go quicker. Now, when you're inking, you don't have to follow the pencils exactly what it is. When you're very close to the pencils, it's still good, okay? So some of this, maybe smoothing it out, thicken it out, make sure those lines are smoother by going quicker. Some of these cloud textures, here I'm gonna ink a few here like this. See, I'm going very quick, I'm doing a lot of flicking motion. And then you get like nice smooth lines. Like some of these smaller ones, just go and flick it, just go very quickly here. Just go in here and just follow the lines and then press. And also think about line weights: thicker, thinner, thinner, thicker, things like that. Okay. Same thing. So with the back of Daredevil, it's kind of too light there. I will actually beef up some of the lines. I'll think about where the sunlight is coming from. If the sunlight is coming from this direction, there's the sunlight. I'm determining it from this direction based on where the shadow is. So this shadow tells me where the sunlight is. Because the sunlight is coming from that direction, this area here should be a little bit thicker, as well as down here. Over here it can be thin, which is okay. Over here it can be a little bit thicker. Okay, over here it can also be a little bit thicker. Just give your drawing a little bit more depth to the work. Okay, underneath here, underneath this neck here, a little bit thicker. Underneath this nose here, a little bit thicker. And these horns already have a shadow. This shoulder here, I would make this part a little bit thicker, like this. Okay, to give it more form. Okay. We're gonna look at the rest. So let's take a look at the mustache. So there's a lot of stippling here. There's nothing wrong with these stippling. I actually, when I'm doing 4 o'clock shadows or beards, I usually like to focus and then point this going to one direction. So even though the penciler, so you see, yeah. See, so Joe Quesada, the penciler, he actually have the center point and everything kind of points towards it. So a lot of people, when they're growing hair, all these little whiskers are kind of going towards one direction because some people have like this little dimple on the chin there, and then when they grow a whisker, everything is kind of pointing that direction. So I see these whiskers, they're kind of like stacked in a row. Try to have them a little bit more random, so it doesn't look like you're doing one row and then another row and then another row and another row. Try to put some in between and then stack them differently. This area, not this nose here, I would make this a little bit thicker. Okay, the clouds looks okay. I like how those clouds are a little bit like some thicker, some thinner, and like it's the line weights are jumping around. So yeah, so Mark, for this one, I would actually have you practice and go in there and work on smoother lines. To accomplish that is to ink those lines a little bit quicker. If you're using a quill or a brush, just move. Actually, if you use any tool, just draw that line more confident and draw it quicker. Look at where the beginning of the line is and look at where the back of the line is, and then draw that line really quickly. And also work on your line weights. See if you can land that line very softly from going from really thin to thick. You should also be able to practice where you get to the point where you're going from thick to thin. So you see that? The more you practice how you can go thick to thin, like this, as well as thin to thick, and then try to practice some of these daggers, thin to thick to thin, okay, thin, thick, thin. See, you see how I'm doing this? Thick, thin. Okay, the more you have control of your tools. When I first started practicing inking, one of the things that I did on my own was to learn how to ink lines from thin to thick, and then from thick to thin, and then I would go thick to thin to thick like this, and then I would go thin to thick to thin. This is 1, 2, 3, the 4 techniques that you can practice on. Try to practice as many directions as you can. Thin to thick, okay, thick to thin, and then we're going to go thick to thin to thick. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, thick to thin to thick, and then thin to thick to thin. Okay, it's a good way of controlling. A lot of artists that are used to drawing with the pencil, they're just used to moving the pencil left, right, up, and left, right, front and back. With inking, you're actually using a brush or quill that you apply pressure, and the more pressure applied, the thicker the line is. So it's another level of drawing where you're moving your drawing pencil or tools front, back, left, right, as well as up and down. Okay, the more you practice that, the better you get with the inking. Other than that, everything looks pretty good. Keep up the good work. So far, I want you to practice having a steady hand, space the taper lines a little bit more evenly, make sure the taper lines are starting from the same position and ending in the same position, close up some of those taper lines and ink a little bit faster. And there you have it. That is my Patreon's inks for the previous editor-in-chief of Marvel, Joe Quesada's work. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Art Review and Critique. If you liked videos like this, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. I'll be uploading more art review and critiques, videos, demonstrations, tutorials, and all of that in the future. So please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Check out my Patreon page if you will, especially if you want to have mentorship from me. My Patreon is patreon.com/WaldenWongArt. And for you to, if you want to know more about me, my name is Walden Wong, comic book artist from Marvel in DC, and you can check out my website with all my links and social media and everything about me. And that website there is waldenwongart.com. Until then, keep on drawing, keep on practicing, and draw lines quicker. The more you draw, the better you get. Take care and have a good day.